Boomers are over it. They are tired of the way these youngins talk these days. There are some phrases that younger generations throw around that drive baby boomers absolutely up the wall. Some are overused, some feel like a personal attack, and some just make no sense to them at all. Here are 12 woke phrases that boomers would love to see banned, even though I bet they couldn't even define woke if you asked. Surprisingly, Skibbity did not make this list, which I might petition to add that to the phrases Gen X would like to see banned. Anyway, I digress. Number 1, safe space. Gen Z and millennials love talking about creating safe spaces, but to boomers it feels like an unnecessary burden. The phrase merely suggests a place free of unnecessary criticism or judgment in all types of relationships, but boomers in leadership roles see it as simply another expectation placed on them by young people, one they never had growing up themselves, and they just kind of don't understand why they need to accommodate you precious snowflakes now. Number 2, okay Karen. This phrase took off as a meme, with Gen Zers and millennials calling out entitled or rude behavior, primarily coming from older white women who demand to speak to the manager a lot. But boomers hate it. Many feel unfairly lumped into a stereotype, arguing that bad behavior isn't limited to one generation, which is certainly true. And boomers who have been trying to live in a compassionate fashion are triggered by this phrase because they don't want to be lumped in with the Karens. Sorry, I guess. Number 3 in the same vein, okay boomer. You knew this one was coming. Nothing shuts down a conversation faster than okay boomer. It's dismissive, it's condescending, and to boomers, just plain rude. It's also kinda ageist. Younger generations, on the other hand, see it as simply pushing back against outdated beliefs, but boomers see it as an instant write-off of anything they have to say. And hashtag not all boomers are antagonistic or condescending towards young people, only a lot of them are. Number 4, cancel culture. Boomers grew up without an internet to police every word they said, so the idea of cancel culture doesn't really sit well with them. Many believe it's just a punishment that is about silencing differing opinions. Younger generations, however, often view cancel culture as a means for accountability and real change, but to boomers, the fear of saying the wrong thing is anxiety-inducing and exhausting. They'd rather just have the conversation openly, even if their perspectives may be problematic, as they often are. Number 5, touch grass. Telling someone to touch grass is basically telling them to log off the internet and go outside to connect with reality. But boomers already spend less time online than younger generations, so they see this phrase as a little ridiculous, and they definitely don't want to be told what to do by anyone, but especially not by someone younger than them. Number 6, gaslighting. Boomers aren't necessarily against this word itself, but they are against how often it gets used, or maybe we should say misused. Many feel younger generations throw it around too casually, applying it to any disagreement instead of how it was intended, to describe manipulating someone into questioning their own reality. And these boomers kind of have a point. The rise of weaponized therapy speak, where psychological terms are bandied about in order to guilt and shame others, means a lot of these important terms are now so misused they've kind of lost all meaning. Number 7, toxic masculinity. Boomers were raised in a time when traditional gender roles were the norm, so hearing that certain behaviors are now labeled as toxic doesn't sit well. Masculinity is a righteous value to many boomers, and calling it toxic feels like a threat to them. They just can't grasp that it's a critique of harmful social norms and not an indictment of all men everywhere, despite the word toxic being right there in the phrase. Number 8, holding space. This phrase is meant to describe providing emotional support, but to boomers it sounds like more meaningless therapy jargon. Boomers grew up often feeling pressured to repress their emotions and avoid vulnerability in conversations, so they don't understand why younger generations would need space for their security, emotions, and needs. It's just all a bit too vague and pop culture adjacent for boomers, and they'd rather you just ask them to listen. Number 9, I'm adulting. Boomers find this one particularly annoying, and I tend to agree with them. To them, paying bills and handling responsibilities isn't an accomplishment, it's just life. But in fairness, the process of transitioning to adulthood is so much harder these days than it was 40 or so years ago. Boomers had a very straightforward path to follow: college, job, house, work until 65, retire, and you could do all of that on a single salary. Nowadays, college is ridiculously expensive, job loyalty doesn't exist, and it's just harder to get on your own 2 feet. So a lot of younger adults end up celebrating their small wins in adulthood. Number 10, emotional labor. Boomers grew up in a time where certain household and emotional responsibilities were just expected, so hearing younger generations put a name to it can be frustrating for them. This one also lines up with especially Gen Z's distaste for stereotypical gender norms in relationships, as research suggests that women are more likely to take on the emotional labor compared to their male partners. But many boomers have crafted their entire identity around these traditional gender ideals, which makes the phrase feel a bit confrontational to them. Number 11, triggered. Originally a psychological term for trauma responses, triggered is another term that has been adopted as slang for basically any emotional reaction, and it's another example of the way therapy speak has moved into everyday life. Boomers often feel like it's kind of lost its meaning and is often used to mock or dismiss them when they express frustration. And it especially causes resentment when coupled with phrases like "okay Karen" or "okay boomer." Yep, sounds like they're definitely triggered. Number 12, low-key. Boomers don't get this one at all. Are you excited or not? Do you like it or not? Neither. I'm low-key excited. What are you not getting, Karen? But many boomers would prefer young people just be direct, and the vagueness of low-key makes it one of the many phrases they'd be perfectly fine never hearing again, whether because they're annoying, confusing, or just completely unnecessary. But let's be real, Gen Z and millennials aren't giving them up anytime soon, and even if they did, Gen Alpha would just come up behind them with some other word or phrase to take their place, like Skibbity Ohio Riz, I think, or something. Did I say that right?